Hello. I'm slightly terrified after that. I'm going to try to use some technology. That's one of my favourite bits of technology. That's the inside of the TARDIS. Okay. And my theme is survival of the fastest, because I think we're in a world that's really changing very fast, and that we all need to move faster if we want to take advantage of amazing possibilities that are opening up in front of us. But if you want to move fast, you've got to be innovating, and if you want to innovate, you have to be prepared to fail. And I might just fail because I'm trying to demonstrate some things live. So please go with me, if that's all right. It looks like it's going very well so far. Let me just try setting up the technology here. So that's the Google homepage. Does anybody know what that is on there? Rorschach, that's right. And so my theme is really seeing the world in a different way. How many of you have got a phone with you? Put your hands up. Pretty much everybody. How many have got two phones? Two hands for two phones? Yeah, a couple of people. Very proud of yourself up there with the two phones. How many of you have got a computer in your pocket? Well, of course, it's the same number of you, because we're all carrying computers around in our pockets. When I was younger, this was my first computer. We have one of these. This is a Sinclair ZX Spectrum made in Brittin. In Britain, we invented computing. Charles Babbage, and then this was Sinclair in Cambridge. And we were good at this stuff. The BBC Micro was around at those times. We were really good at this stuff, and we threw it all away because we taught our children how to do word processing. But there's a chance that we might win it back, because this is the Raspberry Pi. Have you seen this? This is also British, and they've just sold 1 million of them. And what was interesting about the old computer here is you connected it to two things: a tape recorder. Anybody under 30 know what a tape recorder is? And a television. But actually today, a device that's not connected to the internet isn't really worth having. Every device is connected, our phones are connected, and it's that possibility that I think makes the world a very exciting place going forward. So I want to start maybe with a story about Bangladesh. Anybody know where Bangladesh is? Let's see if we can have a look. So we're in Teddington here. We're at Teddington School now. Let's see if we can get directions to Bangladesh. Actually, let's start at Teddington School. That's where we are. Get directions to Bangladesh. How far away do we think Bangladesh is? Oh, okay. It's 9 hours, 30 minutes by plane, or 122 hours if you drive through Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. 126 hours if we go via Iran. Maybe we won't go there. But what, of course, we can do today is we can go there virtually with the phone in our pocket. And there's Bangladesh. Let's colour it in a little bit. Now, you can see all kinds of sites in Bangladesh. I was able to go there about 15 years ago with Oxfam. And we were doing some charity work. And one of the things we were doing was visiting something called Grameen Bank. Anybody heard of Grameen Bank? Grameen Bank was founded on the principle of making very small, unsecured loans. That means there's no, you don't lend against a house or something. You just give the money and hope that you get it back. Not to men, because if you lend money to men, they drink it, but to women. And the loans were to allow women to buy things like a cow, because if you could buy a cow, you could take the milk from the cow to market, sell the milk, and earn enough money not only to feed your family, but also to pay back the loan. And in that way, Grameen Bank was helping hundreds of thousands of families out of poverty. That was 15 years ago I went to Bangladesh. And then 5 years ago, I met a guy called Iqbal Qadir, and he had this amazing insight. And the insight was that a phone and a cow could be exchanged for each other. Now, you might not want to give up your phones for a cow. Anybody fancy doing that? Probably not. But the idea was that if you could lend somebody the money to buy a phone, that they could use the phone to become more productive and earn enough money back to pay for the loan for the phone and also help their family out of poverty. And that's proved to be the case. Because if you are a woman with a family who has a phone and your husband is able to go fishing, and he can call ahead and find out which markets are taking which fish at which price, he can catch fish to order and keep them on the line so they're fresher, reach a bigger market with his fish, prevent overfishing and waste because you're only fishing to order, and have a network of other fishermen who together can access a bigger market opportunity. And that's the kind of effect that the mobile phone is having on everybody on the planet. So when I see innovation and the stuff that we do at Google, obviously I think it's great that we're doing this stuff, but actually I'm more excited not so much by the high-end latest iPhone or smartphone, but by this kind of phone. This is a phone that's selling at around $75, and it's an Android phone, and it can access the internet in the same way as all of your phones everywhere. And you're putting this kind of thing into the hands of people in Africa and India and Asia is helping them to access all of the information on the internet, all of the people on the internet, and all of the computing power on the internet. I think that's extremely exciting. There are 2.4 billion people connected online today, and by 2020, there'll be 5 billion, a doubling of the internet population by the end of the decade. In 10 years' time, there'll be another 2.2 billion people in the middle class globally. I think it's a time for amazing optimism in many ways. For those of us of a certain age, if you go back, say, 45 to 50 years, look at the difference that's happened between then and now. The world population has doubled in that time, but average earnings have trebled. People are living for a third longer. They have 30% more food. And there's lots of reasons to be optimistic because far fewer people are dying through war or famine or disease or childbirth. We're a much healthier place. In fact, the average living standards in Finland in 1955 are the same as the average living standards in Botswana today. Quite surprising how these things are going forward, how these things are changing. So, in thinking about technology and that world, let's just look at some of the things that technology can do to bring people together. When you've got 2.4 billion going to 5 billion people online, what is it that you can do? Well, for example, somebody in Bangladesh might want to look at a newspaper in Bangladesh. And here's a list of Bangladeshi newspapers. Let's pick one of these. And they can access their news online, which is really helpful. And they can also access news and information from all around the world because they've got the entire internet in their hand or in their pocket. But you can't read their news. Well, of course you can now because you can see things like this opportunity just to instantly translate a page to English in fractions of a second using the power of all the computing that there is on the internet. And it's not completely perfect, but the more people use it, the better it gets. And it's a passable way of understanding what you can see on a Bangladeshi website. And they can obviously look up Teddington School and find out all about us on this side of the world. Now, I noticed the other day a story online that was by a BBC journalist, and she talked about a couple who had met on the internet, Brian, who's American, and Anna, who's Russian. And they met online, and neither spoke the other's language, and they now are married and living in the US, and they still don't speak each other's language, and they have communicated their entire relationship through Google Translate. So I hope it's accurate enough, and maybe we should all try that. I don't know whether that will help things. But I guess it makes a serious point about the power to connect people across cultures, across the entire planet, and the opportunity for relationships to be built, but also creativity to happen and ideas to come together and to flourish. So I think it's an exciting time because we're in a world where everybody's connected and everybody's got access to all of the information on the planet and all of the other people on the planet and all of this amazing processing power. And who knows what kind of innovations and growth and opportunities and productivity and social change and creativity can flow from all of those things. And so at Google, what we're trying to do is focus on how we can help people to access all of that as easily as possible. You're familiar with the Google homepage. It's simple and clear, and we want to get you results as fast as we possibly can. I just want to show you a couple of the ways in which we're trying to improve that in order to help people communicate. So, how tall is St. Paul's Cathedral? 111 meters. Okay, that's kind of, maybe you're interested in that. If I then say, actually, I can talk to this. Who is the architect? Okay, that's great. I knew this was going to be a helpful demonstration. Who is the architect of St. Paul's Cathedral? I've had a technical issue this evening because it's too boring to mention. What we're trying to do is allow you to speak to your phone and say something like, how tall is St. Paul's Cathedral, and give you an answer, and then say, who's the architect, and it will come back to your phone or to your computer and say, The architect was Sir Christopher Wren. And so that you don't have to repeat the information several times, and you can have more of a conversation. So trying to understand natural language so that we can do the translation stuff, but also so that accessing the web is more like having a conversation with somebody and be able to do that fast. Now, to do that, you have to understand not just words, but their relationships to each other, and that St. Paul's Cathedral is a concept, a place, a building with a height and an architect and a history and so on. And that's quite hard computer science, and that's the kind of stuff that we're working on and trying to do to put more information and useful information into the hands of everybody. Now, has anybody heard of Charles Darwin? Yeah? Has anybody heard of Charlie is so cool like? Some people. I heard some younger sounding voices there. So one of the other things I think is interesting at the moment is that, here we go, Charlie is so cool like. He's a young guy. I met him about 5 or 6 years ago. He comes from Bath. He's called Charlie McDonald. That's his real name. But Charlie is so cool like is his YouTube name. Now, when I was growing up, the only people who could reach the entire planet with information and content and video were the BBC and CNN. But now, anybody with a phone, with a camera, can broadcast to 2.4 billion people, and by the end of the decade to 5 billion people. And Charlie, when I first met him, had just started doing this. He was making short 5-minute videos on YouTube. Some of you have seen them. And he had about 3 million video views. And 5 years later, we can see on YouTube how he's doing. So he's got now, here we go down here, 295 million video views. And there are 2 million people who want to be notified every time he uploads a video. And we saw the TED setup earlier on and the power of being able to reach people with videos. And now with mobile phones, a woman in Africa can see the teacher who we saw earlier on, inspiring you to teach better. That's the kind of power, and anybody can do that. So I think one of the other things that's really interesting is we're moving from yesterday's world where we had mass markets, Henry Ford and industrial production, dozens of markets of millions of people, where controlling information and its distribution gave you power, and that power was concentrated in a small number of very large organizations and governments, to a world where there are millions of markets of dozens of people, and where everybody has information. You know, within 15 years, pretty much everybody in the planet will have all of the information and all of the people and all of the processing power in the world in the palm of their hands. And I think that's a very different world from the world that all of the grown-ups in the room grew up in. So I think that's really exciting. Where's all this going next? I can't actually see a clock, so I don't know how long this is going on for. Would anybody like to say? Just keep going. Okay. That's great. Where's all this going? Well, one of the things that it does is it produces a huge amount of information, which is also useful. So I just want to show you one other thing. You may have seen this thing called trends. When you're searching on Google, you generate, obviously, information for you, which you can click on and see. But that information also generates patterns. So here's a way of visualizing some of the searches that are going on at the moment. These are searches that people are doing in the UK right now for different people. Often they're triggered by what they might be watching on TV at this time of the day, Call of Duty, ITV, John Lewis Christmas advert seems to be popular at the moment. But that's somewhat interesting. But the patterns in what people are looking for, I think, are more interesting. So if I go back to Google Trends here, I can try searching for something. So what about anybody like Mr. Bean? Yeah? Let's have a look at Mr. Bean on here. This is the interest in Mr. Bean over time. Now, what we've done is we've looked at a sample of searches all around the world, and we've taken out the growth of the internet, which would be like this otherwise. So this is just as a proportion of searches that Google gets, how often do people search for Mr. Bean? The good news is for Mr. Bean that people are getting more and more interested in him. You can see a spike, that's back there in 2007, and that's when his movie came out. But the interest levels keep going and keep going. Anybody know what would be happening here? July 2012, Mr. Bean, the Olympics opening ceremony, remember? Fantastic moment. And so Mr. Bean is popular around the world. Where in the world do you think he's particularly popular? Anybody? Albania? Nice guess. Japan? I don't know, but in a fraction of a second I can tell you because we also look at that. So you can see, in fact, Mr. Bean is particularly popular in Pakistan. And Vietnam and Mauritius and United Arab Emirates. Amazing. Not only that, when people search for Mr. Bean, what else do they look for? Cartoon Mr. Bean games, YouTube Mr. Bean. So if you have Mr. Bean, that's quite interesting. What if you wanted to sell your DVDs out there? What if you wanted to entertain people in Pakistan and Albania? Another way of connecting the world through the power of laughter. It's actually an interesting and serious point to that as well. Now, you can also do fun things on here like comparisons. So that was looking worldwide. Let's zero in and look at the United Kingdom for a minute. Now, I've got a little quiz here. It's slightly risque, and I hope you don't mind me doing this, but let's ask ourselves a couple of questions. Let's think about something we could search for in the UK. What about something like chocolate? I know people in the room who like chocolate. So how popular is chocolate? Oh, it's getting a little bit more interesting over time. There are a few peaks and troughs through the years. Maybe it's a bit of a seasonal thing we're interested in. What about sex? Do you think sex is more popular than chocolate or less popular? Say higher if you think it's more popular, or lower? Higher? I see, it's a mixture. Let's just see. Oh, well, sex is significantly more popular than chocolate, ladies and gentlemen, in the UK. What about football? Higher or lower than chocolate? Higher or lower than sex? One lady's saying very forcibly that it's higher. I don't know. Let's have a look at that. Ooh, let's see, big reveal. Interestingly, football is more popular than sex and getting more popular. We have a population issue potentially on our hands here in the UK. I was just looking at this earlier actually, and it's interesting. You slip from the UK to worldwide. The rest of the world, what do we think about them? Yes, sex is much more popular than football in the rest of the world. That's the way the population's going. So I could go on and on, but I probably won't. Just to say that there's a question obviously as to where is this technology taking us? What's next? And I think you've started to see the trends already. More and more devices that are connected, that give you the power of the internet in your pocket, the ability to connect to people. Some people are starting to see wearable devices. You might have seen some of these. Has anybody got one of those Jawbones or Nike Fuel Bands, those kinds of things that monitor your movements, connect to the internet and keep track of what you're up to? One of the things that we've been working on at Google is how do you make it even easier to interface with the internet? The less is more approach is what we want. The white home screen, you just type a word, you start typing and you're ready at the answer. Fast is better than slow. And so what we're trying to do is make the entire user interface go away. So one of the things we've been working on is called Google Glass, which is not just the internet in your pocket, it's the internet in your head. So what this has is it takes the interface completely out of the way. So you can use your eyes, your face, your hands, and everything else. There's a little screen here. You might just be able to see a light on it that hangs above your vision. So I can read stuff in that screen out here if I want to, which is handy. And it's got a microphone, so it can hear me, a little touchpad, so I can swipe backwards and forwards, and it's voice activated. So could I ask you all to give me a wave and look happy? OK, Glass, take a photo. Take a picture. Great, I'll post that online in a second. And I can talk to it and ask it questions and directions. So I can say, OK, Glass, how do you say, Google, how do you say, where is the bathroom in Swahili? And I can hear that, but you can't. Mbate and Bufuni, apparently. So there you go. It's just an example of, I think, where things might go next. Now, who knows whether people will wear things exactly like this, but the fact is that you can start to connect all that information in lots of different and interesting ways. And I think that makes for an exciting future, a future where the power and the information is in the hands of everybody, where you can communicate and connect and find love and creativity and ideas with 5 billion people, and where the user interface gets completely out of the way. We're interacting with computers on a human basis. And doing that, I think, means a world that's faster, hopefully safer, more integrated, and more fun. Thank you very much.